Good morning. How are you doing? Good morning. How are you doing? All right. We'll give a shout out. Anybody else from Kansas here? Yeah, there we go. There we go. And I appreciate the introduction. Obviously, way too long. But I'm one of those new pesky freshmen, the new majority makers in Washington. One thing I do want to say, I served for about 5 months, and you spend the first few months wandering around Washington saying, gosh, I wonder how I got here. You spend the rest of the time wandering around and say, how did those other guys get here? We are about at that point, and I come from a little small town. It's a small town that's so small. One day I mixed up my delivery. I dropped off my payment to the auto body at the bank, dropped my bank deposit off at the auto body shop, and a few hours later they ended up both at the right place. Now that's a small town that you come from. But I do have an admission. I do have an admission, and I want to admit something very early in my talk here today. That is, I happen to agree with Mr. Edwards. You know, that's the guy that ran for president before he ran for jail. And but Mr. Edwards said this. He said, let me explain. He said, there are two Americas. There are two Americas. And I agree. There are two Americas. There's them and us. Do you agree with that? There are two Americas out there. There's what they kind of call now the Chicago elite, the Chicago mob, whatever you call it, and the rest of us, you know, the insiders versus the outsiders, the Beltway versus the real world. And I was sitting on the floor of the U.S. House, kind of in the first big debate on the budget, and I was sitting there listening to the leftists, and in this case, they were all in the same party, and they were talking, and I turned to one of the guys, the Republicans, been around a while, and I said, Bob, do they really believe what they're saying, or are they just lying? Or they really believe what they just say? He said, quick answer, he said, they really believe what they're saying. And of course they lie, as we found out with Mr. Weiner. And but if you listen closely, just a few months, Washington seems like, to me, a horror film entitled Liberals Unplugged. And, you know, they say things, and they really believe it. That you know, government can do better with your own money than you can. The stimulus didn't work because it was too small. I think that was the Obama Economic Council. The stimulus was too small. Or we heard Mr. Obama telling Joe the plumber, you know, we need to spread the wealth around. The rest of America kind of dismissed that. You know, we remember Nancy Pelosi saying we need to read Obamacare we need to pass it in order to find out what's in it. Or I saw this the other day. I'd missed that early on. The Congressman. Have you seen this one where the Congressman was talking one in the other party, and he was afraid that if we put too many troops on one side of Guam, the island might tip over? Have you seen that one? That's a true story. I didn't believe it till my staff showed that to me, but he is one of my colleagues. And I don't want to make fun of that, but I do come from the state of Kansas, where we are, I guess, very proud to send you the Empress of National Healthcare. That would be Kathleen Sebelius. That's the gal that's going to make the decisions for your future in medicine. And, of course, she said under the Paul Ryan plan as a member of the Budget Committee, I don't know why I don't get in the same sentence, but I guess sometimes we don't want to, because Kathleen Sebelius said under the Paul Ryan plan, old people will die more quickly. And but we can't forget, and my staff said, you know, Tim, you can't ask the question. We had Mr. Geithner before the Budget Committee, and every member gets 5 minutes. I said, please, can I ask him if he paid his taxes this year? He said, nope, you can't do that. But I really, really wanted to. But Washington is about hypocrisy. It is about them having one plan for themselves and the rest of us living under a different rule. And a great example of that is Obamacare and the waiver process. Back in January, I think they do that all freshmen. Somebody from the White House comes knocking at the door and says, hey, I'm a representative of the White House. I just want to come and say hello. We're here to help if you need anything. And they getting ready to head out the door. I pulled out a chair. I said, I've been waiting on you. I've been waiting on you. And one of the first things I said, you know, it's January, and we're still waiting to hear. Tell me about these waivers. Later on, as I said on the House floor, I said, if what we really need is a waiver for all. And why don't you tell me a little bit about the Obamacare waiver process? They hadn't made them public yet. Shortly thereafter, they began to slowly release those. But if you want to talk about hypocrisy, if you want to identify the left, this is a perfect example. Because for the dozens and dozens and dozens of labor unions that spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to elect the president and to push his health care plan through, why are they getting waivers from that great plan? And the White House really couldn't answer that question, but they slowly released it. And as we found out yesterday, after we threatened to have a press conference next week, which we'll still do, we learned out we have 1,433 waivers granted from Obamacare. Well, that sounds like a great thing. What about the other 326 million Americans that would like to receive a waiver? How about that? So, talk about that story. Talk about that. Talk about another story. I come from a very rural area of the country. I was doing a town hall. I've done 58 town halls this year. I kind of wonder why you're doing that, but this is what the process should be, going out and visiting with rural Americans. But I found out in a little town in western Kansas, a gentleman made the mistake of hiring the neighbor kid to mow the lawn in front of the business. OSHA said that's a $6,000 fine. True story, $6,000 fine. I said, gosh, why didn't you just pay him cash like everybody else does? Or the $100,000 fine for, and I used to do this when I was a kid, for that family in Nixon, Missouri, for illegally raising rabbits. True story, true story. And that's what we expect coming out of Washington. It reminds me, Lisa Jackson, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, came before my Ag Committee. As the chairman said, that'll be her last time here after we all ask questions. But the Congressman, much smarter than me, asked questions. Madam Chairman, tell us about coarse particulates. Are you going to regulate those? And she went on and on saying, oh, yeah, we're regulating that. What the administrator did not know, coarse particulates is what we call out in the real world. We call that dust. And this administration and prior administrations are out there trying to regulate farm dust. If the wind blows more than 27 miles an hour, you got to shut your tractor down. And I know when I was a kid, that would have been nice, but that's not the way you run a world. But that is our job. I believe that's what your job is, to expose the hypocrisy. Because when I talk to Americans in the 1st District, that's one thing they look at. Say, are you living under the rules you set for everybody else? Kind of going back to the health care debate. And expose that double standard, push on that. One thing I want to note as well, I think I'm very optimistic, else I wouldn't be in this job. But when I go out and do town halls, I continually ask this question. I want to ask that question of you today. Do you think the next generation of Americans, now hold up your hand if you believe with this, will be better off than your current generation? If you think so, hold up your hand. Is there anybody other than me? Is there anybody other than me? Friends, this is what I see over and over. Thank you. Over and over with average, ordinary Kansans, average, ordinary Americans. That's the definition of the American dream. They think the American dream is in jeopardy, and it is. And it is. But we have the opportunity of what I believe of a lifetime. We are sitting at the precipice of our nation's history. Are we going to go the direction of our founders, of freedom and liberty? Or are we going the direction of slavery, socialism? That's the choice we have today. And as we move forward and talk about the debt ceiling in Washington, Mr. Bernanke says, you know what? Don't use the debt ceiling as a lever to change America. And I've often been accused of being a contrarian, but Mr. Bernanke, that's exactly what we plan on doing. The debt ceiling is the opportunity of a lifetime. This is the chance. And don't let your folks in Washington, whoever you're representing, tell you we can't get anything for that. Because we got to cut now, we got to cap spending in the future, and we got to balance the budget long term. We have to keep the pressure on. And the votes are very close. We need you to keep the pressure on in Washington, because this is the time to restore America to her greatness. Sitting in the Budget Committee, 4 economists, sounds like the start of a joke. 4 economists in a room, and I get 5 minutes to ask them a question. I asked the first economist, a conservative. I said, I'm just a farm kid from Fowler. How much time left How much time left do we have as a nation if we don't face our debt crisis? The first economist said, act like you have no time left. Conservative, what do you expect? 3 other economists, ranged moderate to liberal, they all said, I agree with the first economist. Act like you have no time left. So if there are some Republicans that tell you, we're going to make changes in 2 years. Oh, we'll get the Senate, we'll make changes in 4 years. America does not have time left. We have to face our crisis, and that is this. We have strayed away from our founders and from our Constitution. We have strayed away from our Constitution. We have obliterated the 10th Amendment, and we are ready to obliterate the future for our children and grandchildren unless we face our debt crisis. And it's not a revenue problem. It is a spending problem. It is a power problem. It's Washington trying to tell us what to do with our own money. Other nations have faced this problem. Greece is not, we're not far off from Greece. I don't want to be a doomsdayer because I'm very confident and very encouraged that even though the American people think the American dream is in jeopardy, I'm looking at folks in this room that have the power, have the capacity to restore America to her greatness, to what the founders promised, those principles of limited government, individual liberties, and free enterprise. That's how we're going to restore America to her greatness. And that's the question I have today. But one last thing, one last story. Mark Twain always said, he said, do the right thing. He said it will gratify some people and astonish the rest. It's time to astonish America, to change America, to restore America to the greatest principles that built this nation. And that's not in Washington, D.C. That's not in our nation's capitals. It's not in our state capitals. It's in every business, every home, every community in which you live. Can we restore America to her greatness? Yes, we can. Can we restore America to her greatness? Yes, we can. Can we take back this nation from the left? Yes, we can. Can we restore America to the principles of freedom and prosperity? Yes, we can, and we're going to do it. God bless you. God bless our nation. This is America. We are taking it back. Thank you so much.